First Contact Protocol Captain Mira Thorne stood before the observation deck of Sentinel-9, watching the distant stars flicker like dying embers. Her reflection stared back at her from the reinforced glass, sharp features, dark hair tied back in military precision, eyes that had seen too many diplomatic failures. She pressed her palm against the cold surface, feeling the hum of the station's reactor beneath her fingertips. "Captain, we have movement at Grid 77 Alpha." Lieutenant James Hadley's voice cut through her thoughts. She turned to face him, noting the tension in his jaw, the way his hand hovered near the communication panel. They'd worked together for 3 years, and she could read him like stellar charts. "Show me." The holographic display erupted between them, painting the air with light. Thousands of signatures appeared at the edge of their sensor range, moving in perfect formation. Mira's breath caught. The Krillian Empire had finally made their move. James stepped closer, close enough that she could smell the coffee on his breath. "Command is transmitting now. Orders are to delay them by any means necessary." "Delay them with what?" "This station has defensive cannons, not a battle fleet." Her voice carried an edge she rarely let show. "They'll tear through us in minutes." "There's something else." James pulled up a classified file, his fingers brushing hers as he transferred it to her personal tablet. The contact sent an unwelcome warmth through her arm. "Earth Command mentions a contingency. Project Requiem." Before she could respond, an incoming transmission flooded every screen. The alien commander materialized before them, Zathkor of the Krillian Armada. His exoskeleton gleamed like polished obsidian, multiple visual sensors focusing on Mira with predatory interest. "Human station." His voice rumbled through the translators. "You occupy territory claimed by the Krillian Empire. Surrender now, and your deaths will be swift." Mira straightened, meeting his gaze through the screen. "This is Captain Mira Thorne of Sentinel-9. These are sovereign human systems, Commander." "Turn back while you still can." Zathkor's mandibles clicked in what might have been laughter. "Your species is young, foolish. We have conquered 17 civilizations. You are merely the next." The transmission cut abruptly. Alarms began wailing throughout the station as the Krillian fleet accelerated toward them. James moved to her side, their shoulders touching. "Mira," he said softly, using her first name for the first time in months.
"If this goes badly, it won't," she interrupted.
Though her hand found his and squeezed briefly. "Get engineering to start running interference protocols. Make our sensor profile as confusing as possible. If we're going to buy time, we'll make them work for every second." As James rushed to execute her orders, Mira returned to the observation deck. Somewhere beyond the stars, humanity's answer was coming. She just had to keep everyone alive long enough to see it arrive. Her fingers traced the edge of her command tablet, pulling up James's personnel file without quite knowing why. His service record, his commendations, that photo from the academy where he actually smiled. The station shuddered as the Krillian vanguard entered weapons range. Time was running out. Ghosts in the void, the Krillian fleet moved like a swarm of locusts, blotting out the stars. Zathkor watched from his command throne as his warships spread across the void in attack formation. His tactical officers reported no resistance, no human fleet rushing to defend their pathetic outpost. "Victory would be simple, Commander." His sensor specialist chittered nervously. "We're detecting unusual interference patterns." "Elaborate." Zathkor's patience was already thin. "Our forward scouts report contradictory readings, ships appearing and disappearing, energy signatures that vanish when we investigate." Zathkor slammed his appendage against the console. "The humans are playing tricks. Send more scouts, find their hiding places and burn them out." Aboard Sentinel-9, Mira watched the chaos unfold on her tactical display. Engineer Yuki Tanaka had worked miracles, using the station's sensor array to create ghost signals throughout the system. Drones equipped with reflective panels mimicked warship signatures, appearing and vanishing like phantoms. "They've lost contact with 6 scout groups," Yuki reported, adjusting her glasses with satisfaction. "The interference is making them paranoid." "Good. Keep them guessing." Mira turned to James, who was coordinating defensive positions. "How long until the Requiem arrives?" 4 hours, maybe 5. He met her eyes across the command center, and something unspoken passed between them. 4 hours felt like an eternity. The shift rotation came, and Mira retreated to her quarters for a brief rest. She'd barely removed her jacket when the door chimed. James stood in the corridor, holding 2 ration packs. "You forgot to eat again," he said, stepping inside when she nodded. They sat on her small bunk, shoulders pressed together in the cramped space. The station hummed around them, a lullaby of impending war. "James, if we don't make it..." He set down his food and turned to face her fully. "We will." "You don't know that. I know you." His hand found hers, fingers intertwining. "I've watched you navigate impossible situations for 3 years. You're the most brilliant tactical mind I've ever seen, and I..." He hesitated, vulnerability crossing his face. "I should have told you before now." Mira's heart hammered against her ribs. "Told me what?" "That I'm in love with you. That I have been since the moment you took command of this station and told a pirate fleet to go to hell." He laughed softly. "Terrible timing, I know." She reached up, cupping his face with her free hand. The worst timing imaginable. Then she kissed him, pouring 3 years of suppressed feelings into that single moment. His arms wrapped around her waist, pulling her closer as the world narrowed to just the 2 of them. The moment shattered when Yuki's voice crackled over the comm. "Captain, you need to see this. We're detecting something massive near Jupiter's orbit." Mira and James pulled apart, breathless. She touched her forehead to his. "To be continued? Promise." He kissed her once more, quick and fierce, before they rushed back to the command center. The display showed deep space readings that made no sense. Energy signatures unlike anything in their databases, concentrated in a single point near the gas giant. "What is that?" Yuki whispered. Mira smiled for the first time in days. "That's our answer." The Colossus Awakens Jupiter hung in space like a painted god, its storms swirling in eternal patterns. The Krillian fleet had pressed forward despite mounting losses from the ghost signals, their numbers still overwhelming. Zathkor refused to admit the growing unease in his thorax. 6 more scout groups had vanished without explanation. "Commander, massive energy spike detected near the human homeworld's outer system." Before Zathkor could respond, space itself seemed to tear open. Light bent and twisted around an impossible shape emerging from stealth. The sensors struggled to calculate its dimensions, rejecting the numbers as errors. Then the numbers resolved. The bridge fell silent. The human warship designated Requiem materialized like a god rising from the deep. It dwarfed the largest Krillian battlecruiser by a factor of 20. Its hull stretched nearly 30 kilometers from bow to stern, covered in armor plating that seemed to drink in starlight. Weapon batteries lined its flanks, not the dozens carried by normal warships, but hundreds, thousands. On Sentinel-9, Mira and James stood frozen before the observation deck, watching humanity's greatest secret reveal itself. The Requiem hung between them and the Krillian fleet like a protective giant, its running lights creating constellations across its massive frame. "Dear God," James breathed. "How did they build something like that?" 20 years, Mira whispered, remembering classified briefings she'd only half believed. 20 years in the asteroid belt, hidden from every telescope and spy satellite. They called it impossible. A transmission cut through every channel, human and Krillian alike. A weathered face appeared on screens across the system. Captain Roland Briggs, commander of the Requiem, looked like he'd been carved from granite and fury. "This is Captain Briggs of the UHSN Requiem to all vessels in this system. The Krillian fleet has 30 seconds to begin withdrawal procedures, or we will demonstrate why humanity doesn't build small." Zathkor found his voice, though it trembled. "One ship cannot defeat an armada." "We have thousands. 28 seconds." Briggs interrupted coldly. Panic rippled through the Krillian command ship. Officers shouted conflicting orders. Some demanded immediate attack, others begged for retreat. Zathkor's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of severe stress among his species. "Hold formation," he roared. "Prepare all weapons." It's a bluff, a human trick like their sensor ghosts. Back on Sentinel-9, Mira felt James's hand slip into hers again. They'd survived long enough to see this moment, but now came the true test. Would the Krillians retreat, or would they force humanity to show its teeth? "I'm glad you're here," she said softly. "Whatever happens next. Nowhere else I'd rather be." James squeezed her hand, his eyes reflecting the distant lights of the Requiem. Yuki pulled up tactical displays, her voice hushed with awe. "Captain, the energy readings from that ship. It's charging weapons. All of them." The Requiem's hull began to glow, soft at first, then brighter. Lines of power ran across its surface like veins of lightning. The countdown reached 0. Zathkor made his choice. All ships, fire at will. The Krillian armada unleashed hell itself. Plasma bolts, missiles, energy beams. Thousands of weapons fired simultaneously, lighting up the void like a second sun. The barrage struck the Requiem's shields, and for a moment, nothing else existed but light and fury. When the light faded, the Requiem hung unchanged. Not a scratch marred its hull. Then it was humanity's turn to answer. Trial by fire, the first salvo from the Requiem rewrote the rules of warfare. A dozen of its primary cannons fired in perfect synchronization, each beam a column of concentrated death. The shots crossed the distance between ships in heartbeats, and where they struck, Krillian cruisers simply ceased to exist. No explosions. No debris fields, just empty space where warships had been moments before. Zathkor watched 17 of his vessels vanish and felt something he hadn't experienced in decades of conquest. Pure, primal terror. His command throne felt like a trap now, holding him in place while death approached. Evasive maneuvers, he screamed. Scatter formation. The armada broke apart, thousands of ships fleeing in different directions. But the Requiem didn't pursue. It simply rotated, bringing fresh weapon batteries to bear, and fired again. And again. Each volley claimed dozens of vessels. On Sentinel-9, alarms suddenly blared. "Captain, multiple Krillian bombers breaking from the main fleet," Yuki shouted. "They're heading straight for us." Mira's tactical mind shifted instantly. "James, get defensive batteries online. Yuki, launch all remaining interceptor drones." The command center erupted in controlled chaos. Mira coordinated their defense while watching the bombers approach on her display. 15 ships, small but deadly, loaded with enough ordnance to crack the station open. Defensive batteries firing. James reported, his hands flying across his console. "Got 3, 4 down." "They're too fast!" The station shook violently as the first bomber struck their shields. Lights flickered. Another impact, then another. A console exploded in sparks, and James threw himself in front of Mira instinctively as shrapnel flew past. "James!" She caught him as he stumbled, blood seeping from a gash across his shoulder. The world narrowed to tunnel vision, his pale face, the red spreading across his uniform. "I'm fine," he gasped, though he clearly wasn't. "Station integrity?" "Shields at 40%, Yuki called out. 6 bombers still incoming." Mira eased James into a chair, her hands shaking as she pressed emergency sealant to his wound. "Don't you dare die on me, Hadley." "Not after finally kissing me." He managed a pained smile. "Wouldn't dream of it, Captain." She forced herself back to command mode, though part of her wanted to stay at his side. "Yuki, can we target their approach vector?" "Working on it. Wait, something's happening." On the main display, a section of the Requiem's hull opened like a vast hangar door. Dozens of smaller ships poured out, though smaller was relative. Each fighter was the size of a Krillian frigate, and they moved with predatory grace. The human fighters tore through the remaining bombers in seconds, their weapons precise and devastating. Within minutes, the threat to Sentinel-9 was eliminated. Mira returned to James, kneeling beside his chair. His color was returning as the sealant worked, but she couldn't stop touching his face, his neck, reassuring herself he was alive. "I thought I lost you," she whispered. "Takes more than that." He caught her hand, pressing it against his chest where she could feel his heart beating strong. "Mira, when this is over," she interrupted. "You're taking me to that little restaurant you're always talking about on Europa Station. The one with the real pasta. It's a date." He pulled her close, ignoring the pain in his shoulder, and kissed her like the world was ending. Because in a way it was. The old world, where they'd kept their distance and followed regulations. That world was gone. Yuki politely focused on her screens, though Mira caught her smiling. Outside, the battle continued to rage. But in this moment, in the midst of chaos and war, 2 people found something worth fighting for beyond duty and survival. They found each other. The new order, the Krillian armada, was dying. What began as a proud fleet of thousands had been reduced to scattered groups, fleeing in all directions. The Requiem stood at the center of the carnage, untouched and terrible, a monument to humanity's hidden strength. Zathkor's command ship limped through space, its engines damaged, shields failing. He'd lost count of how many vessels had been destroyed. His officers no longer looked at him with respect, only fear and accusation. "We should have retreated." His second-in-command hissed. We should have listened when they warned us. Before Zathkor could respond, his sensors detected movement. The Requiem was turning, its massive form rotating with surprising grace. Not toward the fleeing ships, but toward a different target, the Krillian staging area near the colony moon of Titan, where civilian transports waited to carry occupation forces. Horror dawned on Zathkor. The humans thought he was targeting their civilians. They were moving to intercept a threat that didn't exist. His troop transports were never meant for combat, only occupation after victory. Broadcast on all channels, he commanded, his voice broken. Tell them we surrender. Tell them to spare the transports, now! The transmission went out in every language the Krillians knew. Captain Briggs's face appeared on the screen moments later, his expression carved from ice. Commander Zathkor, you will order every Krillian vessel to power down weapons and submit to inspection. Any ship that fails to comply will be destroyed. You have invaded sovereign human space, and you will face the consequences. We surrender, Zathkor repeated, and the words tasted like ash. We surrender completely. On Sentinel-9, Mira and James watched from the medical bay, where a doctor was finishing with James's shoulder. They sat close together on the examination bed, their hands intertwined. It's over, James said softly. For now. Mira rested her head against his uninjured shoulder. But everything's different now. The galaxy saw what we can do, what we've been hiding. Maybe that's good. Maybe they'll think twice before threatening us again. Through the medical bay's viewport, they watched the Requiem assume a defensive position near Titan, protecting even the Krillian transports from any rogue attackers. It was a statement. Humanity would defend life, even enemy life, once the fighting stopped. I was serious about that dinner, James said, turning to face her properly, and about everything else. I'm done pretending I don't love you. Mira smiled, really smiled for the first time in days. The regulations can be updated. We just want a war with one ship. I think Command can handle updating some paperwork. He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. Say yes, Mira. Say this isn't just battle stress or adrenaline. It's not. She kissed him back, deeper this time, pouring certainty into it. I love you too. I have for longer than I want to admit. Yuki's voice interrupted over the comm, deliberately cheerful. Captain, you're needed on the command deck. The Requiem is sending over diplomatic personnel to coordinate with the Krillian surrender. On my way. Mira stood, pulling James up with her. Together? Always. They walked to the command deck hand in hand, no longer hiding. The crew pretended not to notice, though several smiled. War had a way of making people realize what truly mattered. In the days that followed, the galaxy learned a new truth. Humanity had spent 2 decades building not just a warship, but a promise. They would defend their own, protect the innocent, and show mercy to the defeated. The Requiem became both symbol and guardian, proof that Earth's children were neither prey nor predators, but something more complex. Zathkor was returned to the Krillian Empire in shame, bearing a message. Humanity was not to be trifled with. 17 other empires had fallen to Krillian might, but the 18th had broken them instead. Months later, Mira and James sat in that restaurant on Europa Station, real pasta between them, the windows showing Earth rising over the moon's icy surface. The Requiem was visible in orbit, a distant guardian star. To new beginnings, James raised his glass. To surviving long enough to have them, Mira countered, clinking her glass against his. They'd helped change humanity's place in the cosmos, but more importantly, they'd found each other in the chaos. And that, Mira thought, as James smiled at her across the table, was the real victory worth celebrating. The galaxy would never forget the day they learned humanity's strength. But Mira would always remember it as the day she stopped hiding her heart.